Hello, it's the last session on the fashion stage. Who's been here since morning? Oh, legend. And who's new to this session? Half of you. Okay, fine, fair enough then. Well, we've got a really, really good session with one of the world's most iconic brands out there. A brand that does so much for sustainability and so much for the world. And everything that they do with purpose, which I love. We're joined by a speaker from one of the most iconic brands, a brand which is principled brand in the world, and a company that's long redefined what it means to do business, but for good. Now, Patagonia has never followed traditional playbooks. They never have. From rejecting conventionally grown cotton in the 90s to giving away its profits to fight the climate crisis. It has proven that environmental and social responsibility aren't a sideline. They really are a strategy, and they're not just buzzwords nowadays. Now, in this keynote, we have got Alex Beasley, the regional manager for Northern Europe, and he will unpack what it means to lead with purpose. And even when the stakes are really high and when the path is looking to be uncertain. Now, this is a conversation about integrity, innovation, courage, and to put planet over profit. Take it away, Alex. This is the last one from me. See you later. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. First off, I feel like I should say thank you to you because I realize this is the only time in my life I'm going to be sharing a slot with Idris Elba. I really appreciate you staying here. I also brought a prop with me, which I'll come up to in a minute. My name's Alex. I've worked for Patagonia for 10 years. A little while ago, we turned 50. We're now 53 years old. But my life with the company, my relationship with the company started before I actually joined. We often get asked what's our favorite product. Most of the time, you'll talk about the fact that it's your favorite rain jacket, your favorite base layer, your favorite rucksack, but for me, it's a different type of product. It was actually this one. I bought this after getting my first rejection from the company. I tried to join them in 2004, and they told me no, I had to go away and find myself, which is completely true. This came out a year later, and I read it. I bought it on holiday in Keswick when I was out in the Lake District. And I read it and thought, at some point, I really want to work for somebody as visionary as Yvonne. It took me a little while, but I did get here in the end. But I'll come back to this a little bit later. Now, quick show of hands. Who's heard of Patagonia? Thank you. I do genuinely appreciate the fact that most of the time when I ask that question, people put their hands up. I think it would be really interesting, though, at some point when nobody puts their hands up. I think that would be really interesting dynamic just to see how that goes. Now, we've been in business, as I mentioned, for about 50 years. What many of you might not know is our original foundations. We actually were a climbing equipment company first. We were founded back in the 60s by Yvonne. Yvonne's the guy here with the S on his sweatshirt. This is him with his friends in the late 60s. They were climbing bums, as he said, dirt bags, which is the phrase that we prefer to use, alongside juvenile delinquents, which is Yvonne's own word for describing himself and his mates. He taught himself to be a blacksmith. He made climbing equipment in the tin shed here, which they sold for 6 months out of the year, and then they disappeared off for 6 months doing all the things they loved: climbing, surfing, hiking, other things like that. Now, it wasn't until the early 70s, he came across to Scotland. Now, in Scotland, we climb differently. We climb using traditional methods, where you don't hammer pitons into the rocks. You use hexes and chocks. You leave the rock face clean as somebody else climbs behind you. And we also wore a really amazing piece of clothing called a rugby shirt. Now, for Yvonne, the rugby shirt was the pinnacle of climbing clothing at the time because it was durable, because it was made to respond to the rigors of rugby. It also had something really innovative, which is a collar. It would flick up, so when you had a harness that came around here, with all your heavy climbing rack here, it didn't rub against your neck. So he thought, I'm going to buy some of those and take it back, which he did. His climbing friends liked it. He bought some more. He imported them from Umbro. He sold out a number of times, and that's how Patagonia was born. Originally, we were sold for better margin than climbing equipment. It's very narrow margins. He sold out, sold through, and he's founded Patagonia alongside Chouinard Equipment. That was way back in 1973. Ever since then, we've continued to support the outdoor sports that many of us enjoy to this day, things like skiing, mountaineering, surfing, fishing, mountain biking, running, hiking, camping, all sorts. Now, we're also known for something else, which is this word. Hands up who also thinks Patagonia is a sustainable company. It's one of the things that we're well known for, right? I think for us here, this is where we start to think differently about what this word means. Because for us, realistically, is anything that we're doing, any of us, really sustainable? And when you think about the derivation of that word, the definition of what sustainability means, that's when things start to change. Now, I noticed that this is a white slide, which should have here the definition of sustainability made by the UN in 1987. Now, that definition is the ability of the current generation to meet its own needs while not impacting the ability of the next generation to meet its own needs. And when you consider that definition, can you really say that anything that we're currently doing is truly sustainable? Is anything that we're doing something that we want to sustain and pass on to a future generation? This is why we don't think of ourselves as sustainable. We question that. So if we don't call ourselves sustainable, then what do we call ourselves? We prefer to think of this word, which is responsible. Now, everybody can understand what responsibility is, right? Hands up, does everybody understand what the word responsibility is? I think we all know it. It's the thing about being accountable to both your successes and your failures. It's being accountable for the things that you put in the world. It's being accountable for the things that you say. It's being accountable for the things that you do in the hope that you improve things for the following generation. If there's any parents here, most of the time when you think about your kids, the thing that you want to do is leave the world in a better place for them. So really, is sustainability the thing? Shouldn't we be thinking about responsibility? So for us, we class ourselves as a responsible company, especially when you think about the mission statement that we have, which is this: we're in business to save our home planet. Now, personally, I think there's a word missing here, and the word that's missing is help. We're in business to help save our home planet because we can't do that alone, and that's why I'm here today, because hopefully you all think something similar, especially as the room's filling up. And Idris, I'm sorry if I've taken your crowd. Now, alongside that, I'll also tell you a little story. When Yvonne, we have a company gathering every now and then, it's called a town hall. When Yvonne came up with this mission statement, he talked about it to the company and he asked for questions. And one of the questions he got was from one of my colleagues in Ventura, who said, "What does this mean for my job?" And Yvonne looked at him and smiled and said, "The great thing is I employ really smart people. You'll figure it out. I'm not here to tell you what you need to do. You just need to go on and work out how you're going to do it." Now, I love that latitude, and I love that sense of entrepreneurship that you get from working for somebody like that. But when you think about this is huge. I'm never going to achieve this. I know that by the time I die, then I'll have done a small part, but it's probably still ongoing. So when you think about that, what on earth do we use in order to be able to guide how you go about making any decisions? And this is where this comes in, which is values. Now, values is something which we throw about very often, whether it be personal, whether it be companies. And I like to use definitions to help ground thought process and a little bit of discussion. Now, within that, this is going to do it again. So this was a black slide with a definition on here of what values is. Now, who's heard of a guy called Dr. Steve Peters and a book called The Chimp Paradox? I can see a few people nodding. Okay. So I was listening to a podcast with Steve Peters a little while ago. Now, Steve Peters is a clinical forensic psychologist. I bet you didn't think you were going to get a psychology lesson neither. He was asked, he works with many different famous athletes, people like Chris Hoy, Victoria Pendleton, Raheem Sterling, to name a few. And in the podcast, he was asked, what do you look for first before you start working with somebody? And he, without a pause, he said values. And then he was asked, why? Well, because once you understand somebody's values, you can then understand what motivates them, and you can help share goals together and work towards whatever people want to achieve, knowing intrinsically what motivates them, which makes sense. And then they asked a really smart question, which was, how do you define a value? Now, how you define a value, how he defined a value, was an ethical stance with a behavior attached. And the words in that are really powerful to me, like an ethical stance, so ethic. There's a moral component there, first off. Stance, you take a position on something, you have a point of view. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but it's a point of view. And third and most important, there's a behavior. There's an action associated with that moral stance. Now, for us, you think about values. They're written in this book, in here, and they came at a time that we got it wrong. Like I probably shouldn't swear. We completely mucked it up. You probably know where I was going with that thought. Now, when I read that in here, this is in the most important chapter. It's on page 187 in the first edition, which is this one, and it's called The Environmental Philosophy of the Company. Inside that chapter, on page 200, are 5 sentences. I've also pulled them out on one side just in case I forget them, because I'm slightly nervous, but I'm sure that I won't. The first one is lead an examined life. The second one is clean up our act. The third one is do our penance. The fourth one is support civil society. And the fifth one is use business to inspire and implement solutions against the climate crisis. All born out of sessions where Yvonne and the family and the managers all got together to say, hey, listen, we mucked it up and we're having a greater impact. What are we going to do? Those are our values. All great. If you take the definition of those values, an ethical stance with a behavior attached, then I want to share what we've done with them. So I've pulled together the first 3, all in these little moments. Now, these little moments all demonstrate those first 3. Lead an examined life, clean up your act, and do your penance. It could be anything from the top left-hand corner, 1% for the planet, where every year we give away 1% of our global sales. It could be the bottom left-hand corner, we have the best weed in town, which we did. And that was when we changed the way that wetsuits were made. The most polluting chemical within wetsuits is neoprene. We changed neoprene to be Ulex, a natural rubber. That was the first 3 all rolled in. And then we did number 5. Number 5, use business to inspire and implement solutions. We open sourced that technology and freely made it available to every other wetsuit manufacturer in the world so that they could also use the same technology. Completely against competitive wisdom, but that was all about being able to reduce impact. It could be something as really small as the top right-hand corner. Don't buy this jacket. I love this story. This is really true. So if you think about this is just an advert, but this is all about number 2. We've only run it once because it wasn't successful. We actually sold more product. And we never did it again. You would do the reverse, wouldn't you? You would keep going. Small cost, but high impact aligned with values. Or it could be the way that your clothes are grown really matters. We walked away from standard industrial farm cotton back in 1996. In 2012, we moved on again to regenerative cotton. We're actually growing that cotton sequesters carbon from the atmosphere, so the T-shirt that's made from that product was actually carbon neutral. All different and all in pursuit of those values. I could fill up lots of different examples with this, but I also want to touch on points 4 and 5. 4. Anybody remember 4? 4 was support civil society. Now, within that, what does that mean? So for us, that means making sure people go out and vote, not telling them what to, or who to vote for, just get out and exercise the right to vote. But support the company, support the political parties that are actually benefiting the environment and benefiting the world. But alongside that, it's also the freedom of speech. Being able to say we're unhappy with the way things are going, and being able to get out and protest is important, so we support that. So at the times that we've been out protesting, which many of us have, if we got jailed, the company would front the bail to get us out. Thankfully, that's not happened too many times. But then alongside that, it's also using the 1% for our planet to support NGOs. Now, I've used this picture a couple of times. This is not marketing filler. This is actually the River Vjosa. Does anybody know the River Vjosa? So this is now Europe's first and only wild river national park. This is 300 kilometers long. From source to sea, it has no man-made interruptions in it. But for a long time, there were 300 dams planned to go in on this river. 2 NGOs fought against it for 12 years. We started supporting them back in 2017. With the Albanian government changing their mind, about 4 years ago, they made this Europe's first wild river national park. Value number 4 in action, which I'm so proud of because we did a small part of that. And everybody looks at us sometimes and thinks, well, we can't do things like this. But honestly, I would never have thought that I would be a small part of that. But I was, and I am. And all I did was to go out and talk about it. Nothing else, just that. Everybody can do that if you've got values and you take action aligned with your values. Now, right now, on that river, on the banks of that river, this week, we're having a grassroots Tools for Activists conference where we get all our NGOs together and we talk through the challenges, we share ways to be able to improve what we're doing together, and we work together in order to make sure we can keep campaigning together. That's number 4. And then number 5, use our business to inspire and influence solutions against the climate crisis. Because let's face it, there are some very, very, very rich people around. And if they want to go and colonize Mars, we can't help but think they've got the telescope the wrong way around, because surely there's plenty to be done on Earth first before they start sending out retired actors, pop stars, and influencers. There's other things we could do for sure. It's very kind of you, thank you. But alongside that, there's also the thought process that goes in the company's head about who business is really accountable for. And the first time my black slide worked, which is really good. The question that he asks, and I have to read this out because it's really powerful, who a business is really responsible to, their customers, shareholders, employees. We would argue that it's none of the above. Fundamentally, businesses are responsible to their resource base. Without a healthy environment, there are no shareholders, no employees, no customers, and no business. Now, with that thought in mind, this is why back in September 23, Yvonne and the family did something really quite special and quite different. They gave the company away in its entirety. So Earth is now our only shareholder. That's who I completely work for. We split the business into 2. There's Patagonia Works, which is all of everything that I described in that slide that had values number 1, 2, and 3. That's all contained in that bit, who I work for. Any of the excess profit that's not invested back in that company is then taken out and goes into the Holdfast Collective. And that's all put behind and supporting NGOs and campaigns trying to protect our home planet, all in pursuit of that. It's because there's a realization for us that actually money and impact can only go so far. It's the stories that we tell, and it was interesting in the session before. They were talking about the value of storytelling. It's the value of stories, a different way to do business, a different way to go about doing things, a different way to make things, and a different way to communicate. That's where our value really starts to shine and where it's completely different. Now, I said, what's next and where do I need your help? Then I think alongside those things, what I'd recommend for you all and ask for you all is, if you have got values, is to take action aligned with your values. There's something else that Steve Peters also says within this, which is if you take action aligned with your values, it creates clarity and it creates peace of mind. Every time that we follow this, and I can say this because I do this in my daily work, where we don't, we get tension. We call it engineered tension because sometimes we like the tension. I was once told that in every healthy relationship there's always a little bit of tension. But a little bit of clarity and a bit of peace of mind also goes a long way. Being unusual is really important because business as usual is not going to solve the climate and ecological crisis. It's got us to where we are. We have to think differently. And then finally, be responsible. You're never wrong for doing the right thing. Now, we've turned 53 this year. Now, as part of our 50th celebration, we pulled together a short video which is about what we think is coming next. I'm really fortunate, I'm very proud to work for the people I work for and the people that I work with, and this is a nice way to be able to share that with you, which hopefully it will work.
If the first 50 years were an experiment,
to prove that a business could be responsible, and successful.
Irreverent.
And reverential.
Quiet.
And louder than hell.
Turns out, it's not just possible, it's profitable.
So it's time for a new experiment, because the problems we face are more dire than ever.
Well, because it's sustainable, for God's sake.
What's at stake is this enormous commonwealth.
So what's next?
What's next is resilience.
What's next is turning capitalism on its head and putting our money where our mouth is.
What's next is simple. It's human-powered, and it's finding the joy in doing difficult things.
You know, you think life is just one big playground, and well, yeah, it is.
What's next is unstoppable.
Motivation.
There is a proverb that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together.
Not a lot of people understand how serious we are about saving this planet. I'm dead serious.
He's completely true. He's right. He was in Amsterdam last week. He said he's never worked harder. The guy's 87 years old. And he said to us, the thing that you guys have got in EMEA at the moment, because like all American companies, anything outside of America is slimmed down into 4 words to describe 2/3 of the globe, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. He said you've got a small team and you're focused on making things different and you're focused on making things an impact. And I'm really proud of all the work that you're doing. It goes a long way to hear that from the guy that, on that second slide I showed you, there he was in his sweatshirt with a big S, and he's still there now, still prodding and still pushing and still telling us, we've still got a planet to save, you've got to make sure you go out and do it. So I'm here because of value number 5. I'm nervous about public speaking like lots of people. This is not put together by a marketing team, this was put together by me. This was the things that I wanted to share with you because I think values are really important, and there's something that I kind of feel that many politicians have lost the plot around things that are important. Values are the things that enable us to make things happen in line with where we want things to be and where we want things to happen. And I hope this is some small way of being able to give you all a little bit of, instead of inspiration, something where you're inspired to go and do something in pursuit of those things that you want to achieve. There's a little soundbite in that movie which says, it's the proverb, and it says, if you want to go fast, you go alone, and if you want to go far, you go together. That's why I'm here, because we do need your help, and I really hope that you can do anything, no matter how small, because it all counts. And finally, this is my thank you slide, and it worked. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it. Thank you. And I think I've mucked up their timing because I'm 2 minutes early. Sorry. So I'm happy to take any questions if we've got time, but I think I also might be kicked off. Hi. I'm going rogue now, I realize that.
So I just have a simple question. The founder is such a strong figure in this company, that's very obvious. I mean, Yvonne is just the person that I admire very much. So what mechanisms do you have in place in order to ensure that this incredible vision of his is going to be alive long after he's gone?
That's a great question, and we've got part of an answer. The main reason that they took the decision they did to split the company in two and give it away is exactly that. It's to make sure that his legacy and their legacy is actually set in stone. So the way that the company has been founded, then all of the values openly written about in here are all contained within our statute for Patagonia Works that I work for. And then the Holdfast Collective holds that to account against those values. It can't change. That's one. The second thing is this, because putting things in written word has a big impact because it gets people like me. It was never meant to be a manual. It was never meant to be a best-selling book. It was actually a manual for me. If I come later, then this is a way that I can understand the direction of the founder, why we set up, why we started, what the direction is, but it doesn't tell me what I need to do. It just gives me an idea on how I might go about doing that. But also, it is the thing that we all constantly think about. But then that's the accountability and the responsibility that we have to hold ourselves up against their vision. But that's a great question. Thank you. I've got 30 seconds. Is there anybody else? Okay, I think I might have gone rogue enough. Thank you very much for your help and your time. Thank you.